All right, guys, we are live. Happy Thursday here, and welcome to another PDOCS Livestream Series episode. As you guys saw probably in either my story or my post or something in the group earlier this week, this is all about crafting compelling offers that actually sell in the marketplace. I talked a little about how I did a poll this week, and although only a few people voted, this was the unanimous answer and the only one that people said that they were struggling with, or the primary one, I should say. I said, what are you struggling with most, right? I think the three options I gave were crafting a compelling offer, crafting a pitch, or how to really describe your business in one or two sentences, very clear and concise. And people, only a handful of votes again, but everybody said crafting a compelling offer. Now again, I think I mentioned this in the post, and many of you guys watching may know. I am an offer creation specialist. I've done that for over 300 private clients in our PDOCS businesses. I've crafted a lot of the offers in our own brands and offers at PDOCS, Sales Lab, Audience Lab, and multiple offers. And I know to this point, tracked 80% plus of those have been validated and sold in the market. So lots of people craft offers, but you got to craft offers that actually get validated, that the market shows up to, they're interested in, and they will pay a premium for. Not always a premium, right? We're not always crafting high ticket offers, and we don't always command a premium, and there's a whole different process for that. But we're going to talk about kind of the core high ticket offers. Depending on the time, maybe we'll go into some of that other stuff. And anybody that's watching now here live on the live stream here to the group, again, I'll be checking back to the chat periodically, every 10 minutes or so in increments or intervals, or I think both those words work there. So, number one, any questions you have or anything, that I'm talking about that you want me to elaborate on, just drop comments and I'll check in there and I'll try to answer some questions at the end. I would have liked to plan this a little better and done it interactive and actually built somebody's offer live in real time. It'll be very similar to that, and I'm going to go through probably a lot more examples than I could if I was just focusing on one offer. But either way, what I talked about and the other thing you can comment for, and if you're watching on a replay or on YouTube specifically, everything I mentioned will likely be down in the description and all the links to it. But if you're here live watching on Facebook and you just want me to DM you the links, any of the resources I go over, I'm going to be going over 3 or 4 today, just drop the title, right? If you guys want me to send it to you or DM it to you, or I can just send you the replay later when I have everything uploaded. But I know some of you guys aren't on YouTube or don't watch the YouTube clips, which is cool. I can just DM you on Facebook if you want it. Like for instance, the first one we're going to kick off with is the offer creation framework, right? And let's dive right into this. The last thing I kind of skipped over, what I posted about when I first talked about, making this week's topic and lesson, was showing some other diagrams, some more complex, some less. So I don't know if I'll have time to bring those up. I was going to bring those up, but most of you guys already saw that in the post. If not, you can go back on my timeline or in the PDOCS group, just scroll 2 or 3 posts back and you'll see what I'm talking about. But one of those specifically is a little, and we all see those little drawings that Russell Brunson and Hormozi and everybody does in their presentations. So one of those is from Hormozi's $100 million offers. One of those was a Russell Brunson one from, I want to say from OFC, I think it was from the One Funnel Away Challenge offer creation that they do in there. And then one was a much more complex one for a high-end airline solution. But I go through all kinds of different offer frameworks, and as I mentioned, I think some people teach them a little too simple, where like, oh, that's cool, that makes sense, and I can kind of see where you do it, but then they can't go do it for themselves, and they don't actually know like the frameworks and the thoughts and the methodologies that went into creating those. It's just like a simple framework where you plug in X, Y, and Z here. It's like, yeah, you can do that over and over again, but it's not necessarily creating a very compelling offer if you're just plugging in 3 or 4 little nouns or verbs or problems or solutions, and you're like, hey, that's my offer. That could be a talking point or an angle or a hook or a feature or a part of the offer and lead into it, but it's not highly likely that that's actually a high ticket flagship offer that you can sell for 3, 4, 5, 10K and scale a business around, right? And then some people get very, very complex with it, where you're overwhelmed and they can't actually implement and execute and go pull it off for themselves. It looks good when you're watching it and it makes sense, and you can kind of do it when you're being walked through it, but then you get back to your desk and you look over your notes and you're like, it's not coming together the way it did for this guy on the call, right? So I want to walk you through the three most basic resources I use to craft offers, and how I've done it, pretty much through this framework. I mean, I make tweaks and things depending on certain things, but I've pretty much used these exact things, going back through, 300 plus offer creations. And, in doing those offer creations over the years, I can't I can't pinpoint the number of different niches and industries and price points, but it's pretty much universal, I would say. There's certain outliers to that, and we all know there's certain people that we don't necessarily help. But anyway, let's dive into the three things that I use most prevalently, and maybe I'll go over some other stuff if I have time. So number one is the framework for offer creation, and this is what I built out for somebody to be able to duplicate my process, specifically on my team, fulfillment, working with clients and doing offer creation, how I could eventually create a replacement and walk them through the exact SOP. So I'm going to kind of go through these steps here in real time, but what I tell people to do is pre-call, they bring up the offer pillar template and they would click make a copy. So we'll go in and do this stuff. I might not do it step by step here just because it's easier to go through this document by document, but you will see offer pillars template is one of the things up on my screen that we're going to cover. And I'll go to that when it's relevant, but this is the exact process and framework. Then we need to know a bit about no matter who we're working with, right? It's very important to know what they did, who they help, what was their main objective and their main shtick prior to coming in and working with you in whatever capacity. If you're creating this offer for a client, right? You need to know that. What are they looking to accomplish, right? So am I looking to charge more? Am I looking to make it convert better? Am I looking to, what is the main objective of this offer? And if you had the perfect offer and it was running ideally in your business, what does that look like? What are you charging? How many people are you enrolling? What's your conversion percentage? Be realistic, but also shoot for goals that you're not yet hitting, right? Because if you don't have an offer dialed in, you're going to get all of those things a lot higher. Then we're going to go over to the offer building worksheet, which is really the core of bringing this all together and where I'm going to spend the most time today. And as you'll see, we have that one up. I'm just going to go through this whole document first, and then we'll go back to those. So once we go through stage one of the offers pillar, the offer building worksheet, which we'll go through, we go to the pillar sheet and the template next. And then I just tell people to go in and exactly how to fill this out. You guys can slow this down or go back over this, but I'm going to go through all this. This is pretty much just standard stuff. Map out the avatar. Again, I have a pretty basic formula. Now, I've seen all kinds of different offer avatar worksheets through programs I've paid through challenges I've run. I've seen and been through pretty much all of them. But what it really comes down to is usually these things, right? It's like any key attributes, traits, clients, prerequisites to work with a client, right? And I'll go over this stuff in more depth. Actually, we'll go over this stuff in more depth right now, but who can they and who should they serve? So number one, it's good to find out what I said earlier. Number two, what did you do and who did you help going into the program? Because many times people are already serving or speaking with their ideal audience. They just haven't crafted the offer to really persuade people, to interest people, to even get people to want to hear about it. Never mind actually be able to pitch it and offer it, and then have to worry about getting data, overcoming objections, worrying if they're priced too high. But there's all kinds of different attributes. So we want to dial in who they can and should serve. And normally the best way to think of that is anybody you've worked with in the past. I don't care if they paid you or not. Anybody you've worked with and helped in the past, who are your best clients and who got your best results? And that should kind of give you a template for who you can and should be serving. Right? Any key attributes? Did those people, were they avid readers? Did they all enjoy sports? Were they all males? Were they all females? Were they in a certain age demographic, right? What were some of the attributes, traits, characteristics that ideal client or those people you should be serving and can be serving exhibit, right? And we can all go into that into more depth. Prerequisites to work with you, right? So, right, for instance, in some of my businesses, for instance, Audience Lab, which is our software and our data platform, generally speaking, we tell people that our software is not going to be very effective if you're not spending at least $5,000 on ad spend. So right there is a prerequisite. We're telling people, hey, to work with us and to really get best results, we recommend, or you should already be spending at least $5,000 on ad spend, right? So that's a prerequisite to work with us. It could be simple things. things. They could be in business 1 year. They could have already worked with 5 clients. If you're B2B, right, they could have a team of 5 people, could be 20 people. They could do 10K in business per month. They could be a company that does 5 million a year. Who are you looking to work with? B2B and B2C characteristics, if you're selling to consumers or as opposed to other businesses, those are going to be vastly different, but it's still the same things we're looking for. How long have they been in business? How much are they making, right? And then the last thing I have in here is, what have they tried previously, or what might they try instead of working with you and or your solution, your offer, right? So that could be they've already tried to do it themselves. They tried to hire their cousin to run their social media ads, but he didn't do anything, right? They tried a TikTok manager. They tried buying courses. They tried 10K masterminds. What have they been trying? Or what is it's maybe good to know what is some of your top competition and what might they be trying instead of working with you? Or who might do what you do but just does it a lot better, and you feel like they do it better because they got a name, right? A Dean Graziosi, a Tony Robbins, but you still do what they do. You just don't do it, you're not obviously as highly noted as those type of individuals. But who are they already working with? Who might they be working with? And what are they trying, right? So that's very good to know. If you can know these 3 basic areas, although, they all had sub-parameters, that's how you're going to map out your ideal client most effectively, right? Then we get into crafting the offer pillars, which we will dive into more toward the end of what we're going to do here today, because we still didn't even get into the offer building worksheet yet, right? Then we fill in the 4 core pillars. I'll talk about this more when we do it, but generally what I've seen is 3 to 4 pillars, and then a bunch of 3 to 4 subcomponents within each pillar. So guys, that will make sense when I get into the offer pillar sheet a bit more, what I mean by pillars and components, and then I'll tie this back in. But again, I don't want to go back and forth too much as I'm explaining these, switching between documents. But anyway, that make up the core pillar, right? So core pillar, then about 3 to 4 subcomponents that make up the core pillar. For instance, that could be managing ads. What goes into that? Let's think of 3 or 4 subcomponents. Creative, budget and media buying, copywriting, and the funnel and tech, right? Maybe those are the 4 subcomponents within your ads management component of your offer. And maybe your 4 components are: number 1 is onboarding and setting expectations. Number 2 is the build out and strategy. Number 3 is starting to running ad management. And number 4 is continuation and optimization and scale mode, right? Maybe you have these 4 core pillars. Each of those 4 has 3 to 4 subcomponents. So that's a very simple way to explain it. And again, we'll go through that on an actual document. And then I can bring up dozens and dozens of offers where I've done this, and they're just sitting in an inbox where I've saved all the offers I've built for clients and businesses over the years. But remember, these are their deliverables that will get their clients, the promised or desired results. Easiest way to go about this is have them walk you through how they already fulfill the offer with a new client or have done it with the past, and then you make tweaks. So that's what I do when I walk through that on pillars, and I'm like, hey, 3 to 4 pillars. I explain why that works best. I explain why I set it up this way. But I'm like, hey, you probably don't have it set up this way. I don't even want you to look at your current offer and your literature. Just shut your screen off for a minute, look at me for a minute, and just tell me what happens if I'm your ideal client. I pay you $3K, I enroll into your 12-week transformation or Facebook ad or, high-ticket sales program, whatever you do. Tell me what happens, and then tell me, and as they're doing that, I'm making notes, and I'm filling out their pillars and their subcomponents. And then I basically, number 10, I read it and sell it and pitch it back to them as if they're the prospect until, guys, I'm about 90% or higher, where the old prospect, I just build this up in about 20 or 25 minutes of working with them. Of course, there's some components. They have this offer billing worksheet built out. We're going to spend a little time on that, and I optimize it with them. But anyway, in about 20 or 30 minutes sitting with them, I have this mapped out, their pillars or subcomponents. I then pitch it back to them as if they're Joe, the ideal roofer or whatever, ideal, client, and I am them, the business owner or the sales rep. And over 90% of the time, I don't even get an objection. They're like, in the role play, they're like, yeah, I would sign up right now. Right? So that's the power you can give somebody, is once you can do all this, and I'm going to walk you through it, and I hope everybody has the ability to go execute. That's what I want you to be able to do out of this. That's why I'm breaking it down from the base framework that I would teach a team member or somebody filling in for me that has to do offer creation. I would start here and explain it all this way, right? and then summarize the assessment phase of the sales call. So I basically go back and kind of break down for them what I did and why they bought off me so quickly, or why they bought in. I just break it down for them, and I basically show them how I presented the offer in a fashion to show them that that is the best vehicle to bridge the gap from A to B, from not profitable ads to profitable ads, from, overweight to in shape, whatever the gap is. And our offer and our pitch and our presentation is showing them that we have the vehicle that'll get them from there to there in the shortest time, in the best alignment with their values, with their vision, right, to achieve those goals. So at the end of the presentation, ask them if this would get you to where you want to be. Lastly, assume the sale, right? So I walk them through everything, but it's basically they sell the offer right back to the prospect, or that's what I normally do. Then I go through and explain exactly why I laid it out clear, concisely. Because another thing business owners do, even with their offers, when they explain it, they go way in depth and overboard. And you need to be clear and concise and just walk the prospect through this. So a little checklist is kind of going off in their brain. Like every deliverable or component, pillar, and subcomponent, there should be a little like tick box in their brain going, yep, I could use that. Shoot, he's going to teach me how to do that. Oh man, I haven't figured that out yet, right? These should all be little benefits, right? They're the deliverables of the features, but the way we present them are the benefit to them. And they're like, oh shoot, I need that. And then when they get to the end, it's just overwhelming. It's everything they need to get their problem solved or reach their desired result, right? So we go through, do all that, explain how they fill out the offer in full. That's kind of a homework that I explain to the person. I don't do everything for somebody. They have to understand their offer a little bit, but once I do this is a very easy process for them. And then I send all the resources to the person that make sure that, number one, they have the document I just filled out for them, right? The offer pillars template, I make a copy of in the beginning, and I create their own offer, right? So I send them their offer, I send them the call recording, they can take the transcript of how I pitched it, they can listen back, they can practice in the mirror, they can hopefully tweak it and make it their own verbiage and make it a little more their own. The link to the next modules that's in a particular program that these people are onboarding for, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to just stop and see if anybody has any questions or comments, and then I'm going to go into the next phase of this. Let me just open my Facebook. And again, guys, if you just joined or you joined, and I've been talking quite a lot and quite fast, I had mentioned to anybody, if you want me to cover anything in more depth, you have any questions or anything specifically, just drop it in the comments here and I will come check periodically. Nice. I got Nico there just saying, yo, good morning. Awesome. So no questions, no comments. I'm not sure how many people are watching quite yet, but again, if you have any, drop them in the comments. I'll check back once or twice more. Let's dive into the offer building worksheet. Now again, although I showed people in the process to bring up the offer pillar template first, in that instance, this has already been filled out, okay, guys? This has been filled out prior to the call. So I talk about stage one. It's actually, when I send this to somebody, this is pretty lengthy, and the rest of this is super valuable. If you guys haven't seen this offer building worksheet or filled this out for yourself, let me send it to you and make your own copy and go ahead and fill it out, right? I have some examples in there, and I'm going to go over this. But phase one or stage one and stage two. Oh, no, it's just stage one. I'm sorry. Stage one, there's two parts, the 1 through 4. So maybe that's where I have had a couple mistakes. Okay. But I did have it written right earlier in my other document where I said go through stage 1, which is correct. That's all we need the prospect to fill out to go in and do this exercise and build out the offer. The rest of this is really good for building out further messaging and going more in depth. And there's a few more pages of very great resources and exercises for them to fill out. But the initial goal is to craft and create your high-ticket core compelling offer. Right? So let's talk about the 6 things that we want to be doing. And let me blow this up on my screen real quick. Cool. So let's go through the 6 steps really quickly of reverse engineering the offer and the first part of my stage 1. So number 1, what's the big problem you solve? And guys, when you ask yourself this, you do this exercise, be careful, because about 80% of people that do this without going through my little overview of how to fill this out and just giving them a quick little overview of how to avoid probably what I'm talking about right now, you know how many people start talking about the solution they offer when I ask what the big problem is that they solve? They're 2 separate things. They go hand in hand, right? But they're not the same thing. So what's the big problem you solve, and keep it simple, right? What's the big problem we solve in our particular PDOCS brand when we were working with advertisers in copywriting fashion and pumping out VAs and a lot of the other stuff we did? The big problem was there's about 7 million advertisers on Facebook, and the only way to win auctions is by spending more on ads or spending more on higher production, aka Harmon Brother ads, right? So that's the problem. I don't have to go any more in depth. These should all be clear and concise, and once you've gone more than 2 sentences to answer any one of these 6 aspects, you've gone too far, and don't even continue the worksheet until you can condense the answer to all of these down to 2 sentences tops. I don't know if any of these really go longer than 1. There can be long run-on sentences. This is kind of a longer problem, I would say. Most of the ones I come up with are shorter, but either way, that just goes into a problem where I would ask a lot of people, and they would say, I'd say, what's the big problem, right? And they'd say, 7 million advertisers on Facebook, and the only way to win auctions is by spending more on ads or spending more on higher production. That's where we come in and show you, and they start talking about the solution, and all this other stuff. So just stopping at exactly that. Now, who suffers from it? So in this case, and who we work with primarily, and who suffers from this problem is agencies and it's supposed to be marketing firms that want to spend less on ads. I don't know why it says times. I got to go back and fix that. Marketing firms, marketing agencies, whatever, but agencies and marketing teams, maybe that was supposed to be teams, but either way, marketing departments looking to spend less on ads, right? That's very, very simple. You don't need to overcomplicate it. This is better. The simpler this is, the better it is. And then you start getting into the solution you offer, right? So we train virtual assistants who systematically identify, test, and validate the bigger pains of the customer and then create targeted messaging. So that's the solution we offer. Level of sophistication level of your audience is a very good thing to always have awareness of, and something I cover very often that I think a lot of people overlook when we talk about sophistication level. And just very simply, don't overcomplicate it, but am I working with a low, a mid, or a high ticket type of, a high sophistication level type of prospect? Meaning low, do they even know about like the solution and the problem, or do I need to make them problem and solution aware? Or mid, like they know a little, they've been shopping. High sophistication level is already looking for solutions, already tried solutions, already achieving some type of results, but just not where they want to be, right? And one thing I always have to ask my clients, because, if I'm crafting somebody's offer, to give them certainty I can help them, I need to know that, do you have certainty you can deliver on this particular solution that we have mapped out right here, right? And if your answer is ever like less than 80% certainty that you can really deliver the solution, I would go back and work on my offer and validate that more and test it and beta it or get results before I really went any further. You should be pretty much 100%. I could see if like it's your first time crafting an offer and you're like, I'm 80 to 99, I'm more like 99% sure, but I'll say 80% just because I've never done it. I could see that and I would still go with it if you can do this 99%, but you should have certainty that you can deliver this solution before you go any farther. And the speed guarantee is just really to set expectations. Does that mean that's the only amount of time you'll be working with them? Not necessarily, but like, hey, we offer this solution in 12 weeks or less, right? We can do this within 90 days, whatever. You can say it in however many ways. Maybe you can do this in 30 days, right? So a lot of people thinking offering a longer solution is better. I think it's the exact opposite. I think if somebody tells you, hey, Ray, pay me $3K and I can help you lose 20 pounds in 90 days. Hey, Ray, pay me $3K and I can help you lose 20 pounds in 30 days. I would rather the faster solution if everything else was equal. So I would make this length. I wouldn't think about it too much. How long is it on average where you actually get clients' results? Don't try to say I want to work with them longer. I want to do it shorter. What can you realistically expect? 9 times out of 10. There's always going to be outliers where someone won't get results in that time, and we all know that. But let's say your ideal client that follows the blueprint that you've laid out and does all these things, right? So that's how we map that out really quickly, right? And then this is kind of that homework thing that I have people fill in that I say is probably the least valuable exercise that I go through, but I still think it's very good for the business owner, the expert, the offer owner themselves to really be able to do this. And this is kind of something I show them how to go fill out at the end. But what I ask them next are what are the 4 biggest obstacles your prospect need to overcome those results? And I usually get a lot of answers here that are more from their perspective as a business owner per se, or as an expert. I would say look at this from the prospect's perspective. What do they believe their biggest obstacles are? And what I've noticed is fundamentally they usually come down to like these 3 things over and over. It's simply knowledge or lack thereof. It is budget, resources, availability. It is time, and I could say time for number 3 and 4, or I could just time in there twofold maybe and make it multi-dimensional. But time meaning how long until I'm going to get desired results, so how long to get result, and time, how much do I have to put in this program? Is this something I have to do it myself and study for 4 hours a day? Is this something I just have to show up to 1 call a week? Is this something we meet monthly and consult on? So how much time is taken out of my day, and how much time until I see results? Generally speaking, those are some of the biggest obstacles, right? You could mix in mindset. They don't believe in themselves. They don't believe they can do it. There's probably a 4th or 1 specifically outside of those 3. And again, I think those 3 or even 4, because time, those are 2 different aspects, but they're both time related. So however you want to call it. But I think there's one that's always going to be more specific to your industry and your offer too, that I would know already just by, above by these solutions and problems you solve. Like for instance, this example of, advertising having to spend more. And the solution that I offer is to identify pain points so I can create targeted messaging. So another big example that these guys would have here is, in addition to knowledge, it's more about execution, right? So I might even know how to craft messaging, but it's actually the execution. And that's really the 4th obstacle that this person would have to overcome. And I could probably relate to most people. I could probably say to them, you've probably attended workshops or paid for courses or things to dial in your messaging and your copywriting. But, still to this day, you're not necessarily getting that result because you're not executing it right. It's either not executing because you're not doing it in the right format, right? It's different to write email copy than SMS. It's different to write social media posts. It's different to do blogs. Every format has a different framework. And if I learn a copywriting style, but I implement it on the wrong channel or the wrong platform or avenue, it's not going to be very effective. So I can relate and walk him through. It's probably more about the execution, though, would be the 4th main obstacle. So again, I don't really overthink these. Now, once I know these 6 things, that's when I can dive into actually crafting an offer. Right? I go in, and what I'm going to do instead here, guys, I'm going to go back in, and anybody that wants these resources, what I can do is, again, due to time and what I want to cover, I really highlighted the 3 main ones in here that we've already gone over a little, and then I'm about to dive into, right? The offer creation framework, offer building worksheet, and the offer pillar template. Now, there's a few other things. This one's much more elementary for first understanding what offer should I even do? Do it yourself, done for you, done with you. There's a little more elementary, rudimentary. Maybe you do this before you dive into the offer building worksheet. I just know I didn't have time to cover everything. There's a little more in-depth mapping out your avatar and your offer initially before you dive into the worksheet. So a couple more things. If you feel like you're not necessarily well enough versed or haven't done enough research to necessarily fill out your offer building worksheet or your pillars right yet, you might want to start with one of these 2. So if anybody wants access to all of these, just say offer building or offer resources, and I will link to this entire Google Drive with the 6 documents in here, and you can see them all. If you just want one individually, let me know. And if you're watching this on a replay, I will have the link to this entire Google Drive down below in the description. Guys, the last one I didn't cover here and I was hovering over was my offer workshop topics. So I went back and looked at this, and the date was 4/5/23, right? So coming up on about 2 years ago, April of 25 would be 2 years ago. These were the topics I covered, but that's the last time I really ran an in-depth offer crafting or creation workshop, such as I'm doing now on today's live stream. So I did a little different format and topics, but these same 3 documents were covered, and probably a lot of things were similar. And that workshop recording is actually still here in this particular particular Facebook group. If you're watching here in the free PDOCS group, you'd have to scroll back to that date or go look up, offer building workshop or however I named it here. But that document's in here as well. I don't really think it's relevant today. I just thought it was kind of interesting to look at the date and the last time I really ran an in-depth one of these. Now, why I kind of paused and where I was going to, and again, just let me know if you want these resources. Where I was going to is, let's go into an offer building templates that I had talked about that I've already filled out. So the offer pillar template, but let's go into already filled out ones. So you'll see this drive itself just called offers itself, right? So in this drive, each one of these Google Docs, and I could scroll through for ages and they're just going to keep popping up, are all different offers that I built out one-on-one with clients doing this exact process. So I'm just going to pick one or two here at random and go through and show you exactly how the framework worked out and exactly how I pitched this back and everything else I talked about. That's the only way I can do it here in 15 minutes or less. There's no way I can craft one live now in under 15 minutes and explain everything. And I think it'll help anyway, just being able to see one already totally filled out. I'm kind of scrolling. I'm trying to find one that's maybe a more prevalent one. I don't remember this one too much, but I know Jay did pretty well. Let's take a look at this one. It's interesting for me to look back on these too, because a lot of these were crafted a while ago. But really quickly, let's look at the offer pillar template right now as it sits, and obviously name, offer name, price point, and the avatar are all blank. So those are all things when I mentioned on the offer creation framework in here, how we help them fill these things out, right? And what steps to do that all. So again, you can go back through all that. This stuff here are just examples, and this is their homework. You go back to this later. This and their tagline. Right now, we're just focusing on these top four things, then down to the pillars and the subcomponents, which now is pretty blank, right? Now let's go look at a filled out one. So we see this is the client's name that was for. This was the offer. He's an online business consultant. His price point and his length of time to deliver results in this particular program is $5,500 for 12 weeks. Who's the ideal avatar? Experts, authors, speakers, right? What are some of the prerequisites and personality? Prerequisites and personality traits. Hardworking, go-getter type of personality. So Jay kept it very, very basic, right? I like to go a little more in depth here, but I would rather start more basic than more in depth and expand upon this later. So I like when people start more basic. It's better to be more clear and concise, and less is more in most everything online you'll come to find, but definitely in your messaging, in your offer creation, in who you're trying to reach. Then what have they tried, or what might they try instead of working with you, right? Tried ads in the past with little to no results, tried affiliates or partnerships. Cool. He knows a lot about his market. It's very clear and concise. I like that he did that, right? He broke his. Now, again, his looks different because I gave a bunch of examples. Jay came in and erased the examples and just did his homework, right? So this is his offer in full. If he was just to explain it in about 1 to 2 sentences, I help experts, authors, and speakers go from spinning their wheels to now having ultra clarity so they can stop feeling overlooked and finally achieve their moment in the sun without needing a fancy PR campaign in under 90 days, right? I don't even know if you need that last part. It's part of my framework. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it sounds a little cheesier. I probably would have deleted that if this was mine. Either way, not that big of a deal. Or I would have worded it in there somewhere else. But either way, that's pretty good, so that they can stop feeling overlooked. That's obviously a big thing for a lot of the authors and speakers that Jay had talked to and worked with, right? Finally achieve their moment in the sun. That relates to them as like, yes, I've been waiting for that. And then without the big thing. So a lot of these guys feel like they haven't gotten their break yet because they need a fancy PR campaign. So he's saying you don't need that, right? So that's basically the framework there, and that's all in the document. So then how we mapped out his pillars and his subcomponents, as you see. Clear and concise. 4 pillars with 3 subcomponents to each. So Jay, when you work with a client in this 12-week program, how do you do that, and how does this offer come together, and why is it worth $5,500 for them? Well, Ray, when I start off, we dive into an assessment phase, right? So I get on a one-on-one call with them, and I set myself or my top account representative as their one-on-one account rep. We set goals and set expectations on what we're expecting to achieve. Ray, I feel like if anyone's going to judge my program on being successful in 12 weeks, I need to get with them right off the bat and understand their goals, objectives, expectations, and set my expectations. That way they can judge me in 12 weeks. So we like to start there, and that always sets all off the client journey in the right way. Then we dive into mapping out their audience, right? Same ways you've taught me. I use a few extra tools and AI things, but we want to make sure we have their audience dialed in, because so many of these speakers and authors are speaking to everybody, and they're really speaking to nobody, Ray. They need to dial down and speak to a specific niche or a specific expertise. And then we dive into their packaging and pricing, because as you do, Ray, with, mapping out offers, right, we find that a majority of our clients are significantly undercharging. They're competing on price and not on value, and not on delivering high expectations, value, and results, right? So we really work with them on the packaging and the pricing of their offers, their services. Sometimes this is physical products, sometimes this is coaching services, and with speakers and experts, sometimes they also have other, live events and other products off of that, right? Then we dive into their program creation, right? So we want to see what program creation model is right for them. Now, Ray, me being an expert and working with these authors and helping them, map out their business plan, I've noticed that there's 3 different models that work best. So by sitting with them one-on-one and doing their goals and achievement phase and setting their primary objectives, I can recommend which model. We work on this collaboratively and we decide which one's the best fit for them. Then once we pick the model, we dive into the implementation phase of mapping out the funnel, the process. What's our outreach approach, which obviously dives into pillar 3. And then we make sure we have everything we need to execute. A lot of people go into their marketing and their advanced marketing or my next pillars of my program without getting the basics, making sure they have a domain, hosting, anything in a tech stack or little gadgets and little subscriptions they're going to need. I just want to make sure that's all set and squared away, because actually a lot of people get into these phases and then they find a hang up when they build out their funnel that they can't bring it back to a proper domain, etc. So we dive into all that. And then we dive into phase 1 of the marketing. I show you all the best organic strategies that I've seen work for authors, speakers, experts like yourselves, and really map out the exact blueprint and frameworks on how you can copy and paste these and go take these to your social media platforms. How to dial in your messaging. Again, we talked earlier about when you're speaking to everybody, you're speaking to nobody, how to become more relatable, how to get in front of more people. That all ties back into your messaging. And then we discuss your paid traffic strategy. Now, this is highly recommended, and not all of the clients do this. Some people just get results with organic and they start to scale, and then they go into paid traffic once they're making some profit, right? Which is also totally fine. I would recommend, about 30 days into this process, once we have your model and your hosting and we're into the implementation, I would recommend starting to map out about a $50 a day paid ad budget if we can do that. If not, we can work around that and implement that later. But we build out that whole strategy. And then a lot of the advanced marketing comes into, it's not all necessarily tied to the paid traffic, but that certainly ramps up how much people we could drive to a Facebook or a school or a Slack or whatever, Discord, whatever type of platform we want to use to build a community. And we're going to show you how to do that. Some of you guys may already have one. We'll show you how to enhance that. Maybe you need to build one from scratch, but that's definitely going to be a prerequisite into hitting your end goals, right? Advanced email marketing strategies, things that are more advanced than the basics, and how to start doing mass emails, and then building out the simple funnels that actually execute. So although people find it ironic that I have the word advanced marketing with simple funnels, you can do advanced marketing tactics and still keep it simple, and that's what actually works, and that's what makes this repeatable and executable. So everything I just said here, Joe, do you think that this would help you get from where you're currently at now, still struggling to get speaking gigs, still struggling to get published, to actually having a systematized game plan on how to achieve those goals, reach those metrics that you're looking for, and more importantly, earn what you're worth and being able to charge your worth? And boom, that's where I dive into, but that's how I would read somebody's offer and pitch it back to him. Now, going into this call with Jay and working with him, I didn't know anything about this offer. Guys, I haven't looked at this in about 3 years. I'm almost 99% sure Jay came into our program in 2021. It's the last time I've looked at this document, and I just brought it up and went and pitched it back to you as if, I was a business owner through the presentation. Now, in a presentation, if it was my business, I would probably have some cooler visual aids and tools like that, but I could literally just sell off this basic Google Doc with 4 pillars and a handful of subcomponents. I should say less than a handful, 3 subcomponents under each pillar. Total, a couple handfuls of subcomponents, right? But that's kind of this whole process in a nutshell. And I'll bring up 1 or 2 more offers in full. But let's go back real quick to the offer creation framework and just see if the steps make sense, right? So bring up the offer pillar template, which I have up. I click make a copy, which in this case, I use Jay's offer as my copy. I didn't have time to do one here in real time. We went through what he did and who he helped, right? What he's looking to accomplish, we already knew, which is why I was able to go through that like I did, guys. He obviously at this point had filled out the offer building workshop. Now what I do there is I go back over it with the prospect or with my client at this point. I don't do one-on-one offer calls with prospects. These are paying clients. So I go back and make sure this is done right. Normally, I go back and tweak this and shorten it. And they type in a paragraph or two, and I'll come back saying, okay, so you're saying you help people lose weight without using intermittent fasting or whatever, right? And I'll simplify it to a sentence or two. And they're like, yeah, Ray, that's it. And then I'll copy and paste my solution in there and send it back to them and just help them make this more clear, more concise, and just hit harder in 1 to 2 sentences tops. Right? So I go over that, and depending on how they did, a lot of times in the way I do this, I send them as part of their homework when they book the offer call, hey, don't book the call for any time before you're going to have stage 1 of this filled out and resubmit it to me so I can have it up on my screen and go over it prior to the call. So I would usually go in prior to the call and make my tweaks to that, but either way, I would go through that with them. Then bring up the pillars template. Again, as I mentioned on Jay's sheet, right, we typed in the offer, the price, name of the client, name of the offer, duration, billing cycle, yada, yada, yada. We mapped out his avatar exactly in this formula, very clear and concise, right? How did we craft the pillars? Why I say it works best with 3 to 4 pillars is what I've noticed, generally speaking, for high ticket offers. And this is a framework I use generally to craft offers from $2,500 to about $20K. Can it go above that and below that? Sure, but that's been my bread and butter. And almost every offer in that file I was scrolling through and you guys were seeing all of them, they were all somewhere between $2,500 and $20K. But what I've seen work best is once you have less than 3 pillars, let's just say you only have 2 core components to what you do and it solves their problem. Clear and it is the best thing, right? The only problem with that sometimes in the marketplace, especially in the high ticket price, is just mindset. People are like, oh, I'm paying $5,000 and I'm only getting 1 or 2 things, pillars, components, deliverables, right? So it's more of a perception thing. I think the smaller amount of pillars, and I do that in a couple offers where I just have 1 or 2, works with a really high sophistication offer. High sophistication audience that's just willing to pay for a solution. They don't care how much. Less is more to them, right? But in the average audience and marketplace, the mindset comes in, I'm paying thousands of dollars for 1 or 2 primary components. Now, once you have more than 4 pillars, what I would say is the perception starts to become, now he is now he's good at 5 or 6 or 7 things, but he's not really an expert in the 1 or 2 or 3 things that move the needle. So within those 4 pillars, it might be different for all of your prospects, which 1, 2, 3, 4, or combination of the 4 pillars. But those should be the things that solve problem 1 and 2 in their business. That's all anyone really cares about. So once you start talking more than 3 or 4 things, you become a generalist in a bunch of areas and not a specialist in the, 3 or 4 or 2 areas that are going to really drive results for people. That's why I've usually gone with that. I've built offers with a few more than 4 pillars, or maybe not a few, maybe not more than 5. I built them with 2 and 1 pillar before, but what I've seen perform best by far is either 3 or 4 pillars with 3 to 4, generally speaking about 3 subcomponents within each, right? Which is what we talk about there. You saw how I sold and pitched the offer back. Summarize kind of the assessment phase. I didn't go through all that because I wasn't on with Jay this time, but you guys could see how I positioned that and kind of summed it up as saying like, hey, do you see how this would get you from where you wanted to be, right? And so, yeah, that's kind of the whole process and all the things. Let me go through one more offer at random. Let's kick Jay's back down. Let's go back in there and pick up one more and dissect it, and then I'll look back for any other questions, and then we'll wrap this one up pretty shortly. Curious which Josh this is. I've worked with a few. Josh Tate. So Josh Tate turned out to become one of, and I haven't touched base with him in a handful of months now. This is a good example. I doubt you're watching, Josh, because you're crushing it so much. But Josh turned into be one of the most successful clients that he already had foundations going, but he jumped into our PDOCS program when it was still the high ticket flagship program, did a one-on-one knowledge gap call with our team, did this one-on-one offer call, and took this to the moon. Was at 10K months in under 30 days. Was at 30K months in under 60 days. I think he was at 50K months months before the 90 days. Then he was doing about 4 million a year and on pace and shooting for 20 million in the next business year. Been a few months at minimum since I've spoken with Josh. Maybe I see his stuff on social media and he sees mine occasionally, but he's just been crushing it so much ever since I've come across with him. And talk about ideal clients. What I look back for is like, how do I find more guys like this guy, right? Like some of my best clients that I can tell stories. That's how I'm going to kind of map out like some of the characteristics and some of the things that I would have in my avatar, right? Now, Josh had a pretty odd or unique offer for the type of people I generally work with, but let's go through it here real quick because we mapped it out the same framework, and that's what shows you how this is transferable to offline products, to not necessarily coaching, right? But he offered smart light cell therapy for chronic pain and trauma therapy. Price is $800 to $1,200 a month. They were looking to work with 30 to 60-year-old active individuals experience constant pain and or trauma. In the past, they've tried the wait and heal approach, tried a couple of treatments, do-it-yourself methods, CBD, etc., or perhaps even cryotherapy, right? Not too severely injured, not necessarily disabled, but have been in pain for numerous months in a row. Things like that, right? So then we dove into his offer, what he does. They collect data, make sure everything's HIPAA compliant, baseline measure of their certain, again, this is back to the light cell therapy that I'm not an expert on. He would explain these much better. And I'm running really short up against time here, guys. But quick, his is quick, little 3 pillars, 3 subcomponents. HIPAA compliance, baseline measure, tracking and updating. Everything is metrics and digital. The protocol that they need to use for the custom therapy for this particular pain, that's what's custom, changes depending on back pain, neck pain, yada, yada, yada. Review the metrics and results we're seeing. Adapt and optimize the amount of treatments and the frequency and the level of treatment that they're getting. They can go up or down in dosages or whatever, however that works, right? Implementation, show up to appointment. They go through, mindset and helping people, overcome some of the depression aspects of chronic pain and giving them more confidence that their life isn't going to be like this going forward, right? So really cool little offer that turned into to do very, very well for Josh. I know he had multiple locations and was doing millions in revenue. Really quick, let me go back and just touch base and see if there was any questions, any comments. Fred on there with a yo, thanks buddy, nice to see you chiming in. I know I've been on a roll here, just kind of going a mile a minute, going through my offer stuff, trying to fit this into 45 minutes, which I went over by a minute so far. So guys, just to recap, this is kind of the most condensed, in-depth yet simplified, resources, framework, and process I can give you for crafting compelling high-ticket offers. You want me to help walk you through this one-on-one? We can talk about that. I do one-off offer sessions for people that aren't existing clients. You can become a client and get that, etc., etc. And if you want any of the resources, just type in offer building in the comments anywhere, or if you're watching this on YouTube or a replay, it's probably already linked down in the description for that Google Drive folder and all those resources. Awesome, guys. We'll catch you on next week's live stream, and I'll follow up with any other comments here after we end the live stream.